All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Zane Burr.
And I'm Aaron, and
This is Silas.
we left room for Silas, but he's not here. So
in memory of Silas.
yes, so
this
probably a
year.
lot of better things will happen today. Better conversation, more.
We'll actually get some things done.
I think so.
Stay on
This is
track.
exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited. As always, guys, if you have any questions or comments about the videos, you can always reach us at our email, which is futurefamiliespod@gmail.com. And please like, subscribe, comment on the videos. We love to hear from you guys. And we try to use those comments in future videos because we want to hear like what you guys are actually experiencing, going through, and seeing if we can help with those things. So just reach out. And yeah, what do we got today, Aaron?
Well, do we do live updates or no?
Oh, we should do life updates. Yeah. Let's start with you while I think of mine.
Yeah. Okay. We just got back from a, I use this word loosely, air quotes, vacation,
Ooh.
which means a condo with about 20 people in it, which doesn't sound like a vacation, and it didn't feel like a vacation, but it was
in
fun. Destin,
Texas,
Florida.
Yeah.
Down at the beach with our son Walker and his family, which was fun, and Carver and his wife, which was fun. Really fun, actually, because she is good at capping on Carver. So that was a lot. Allie, if you're listening, keep it up the good work.
Good
Carver,
job,
if you're
Allie.
listening, I'm really sorry, but I tried to warn you. And then who else was there? Colt and Molly and their kids were there. Not in our condo, sadly, but they were there. That was fun.
Were the racks there?
Silas and Jules and their two little girls were in our condo, screaming a lot, but they were still really cute. And the Rack family was there, yes. The Rack family, if you don't know, are just old friends that we actually met at the beach probably 14 years ago. And we've had several of our sons try to date their daughters and get shot down. So Rack family, if you're listening, thanks for nothing.
Shout out to Karen.
Yep. And the girls who ditched my sons.
Let's not name them.
We won't. It's all worked out well for everybody
Yeah.
so far. There's still a few kids left that might, eventually become marriage, material. Who knows? And Zane, how about you?
Not a lot of life updates other than we did for Elizabeth's family. She's got a big family. We did our Christmas gift drawing, so I know which family member I'm getting a gift for this year. So
Who is it?
Can't say. It's a secret.
Yeah, those secret gift things are they're pretty cute. That's nice. Yeah.
It's super cute.
I'm not good at keeping secrets, so I wouldn't be good at it.
Yeah, neither is Elizabeth.
Yeah.
She's not supposed to
good.
tell me who
she will.
had my name, but she already gave it away. So
Oh, she already did? Oh, that's awesome.
Steven, I'm sorry.
Shout out
I
to
know
Elizabeth.
that
Good job. You're
You're
awesome.
my secret Santa this year.
Good
So
job. Does he know that you know? Besides this, will he listen?
if he listens to the podcast,
Yeah,
he'll
he
find
probably
out.
won't. Yeah,
Otherwise,
Everybody else, if you know Steven, go tell him. So, all right, here we are. So today, we're looking back at a video I made, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. We did a very short series, I think 3 videos of just things to look out for in your kids. And one of the videos title was called, when do I need to enlist outside help? Or does my son need a program? And so I thought we'd revisit that. While we were in Florida, I spoke with 2 different parents, and they're on that cusp of like, okay, there's some bad behavior, but how bad does it have to get before I abdicate my authority and hand it over to somebody else, so to speak, right? I always refer to it more like a wrestling match. When you are like, you ever seen the old fashioned wrestlers when there's 4 wrestlers and 2 at a time, and when one gets kind of wore out, he starts looking for his partner to tap hands, and the other guy jumps in. I think it's kind of like that more than it is abdicating your authority. It's more like, hey, we're on the same page. We have the same worldview. We want to help you. When do you do that? Right. So Zane, I've asked you to look up some verses for us.
right.
So we're going to start this podcast off with some scripture. And, by the way, is somebody running a timer on this? I didn't even think about that.
Ooh,
Gabe
let's
got
start
it.
a
So
timer.
give us the 10 minutes heads up. Gabriella, our production manager back there. Thank you. Shout out to Gabe.
Man with many hats.
Yeah. And no thermos. All right.
No, he found the thermos. So we've got Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 18 through 21. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel will hear and fear. Ooh.
There you go.
Starting off strong. this
Podcast
morning.
over. We have the solution.
Stone your rebellious
Stone your
teen.
rebellious teens.
Yeah.
There you go. So outgo music, and we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Children of Israel had a high standard. God had a high standard. I read that verse a lot to the Future Men boys and do my worldview classes, and we just talk about there's another verse, and I believe it's in Timothy, which talks about the different sins that are representing the end times, and disobedience to parents is listed in there. I think we just underplay how important obedience is and how much we've just sort of gotten used to the terrible twos or rebellious teenagers, or I mean, it wasn't put up with. It's a very harsh verse. I had a mom, actually, one of the mothers of a student, kind of call me out on how can you read that verse to these kids? That's so, it's so terrible, and we don't do those things anymore. And it's like, kind of like, how dare you? And I'm like, well, I didn't say it. And it is in scripture. And yes, I granted there's a context for that. I know that. So there's a couple more, but I wanted to start with that one just to show the seriousness of, like, these families you're in dire straits sometimes. And it's like, you do need to do something. This is what it came down to in Israel. And to be honest, you'd only have to do that once or twice. And boy, everybody else would sure get the message. At Future Men, we have like one of our levels on our behavioral system is called non-compliant. And when the boys see what's going on to the students on non-compliant, and some of the like privileges they don't get, some of the things they're not allowed to do, some of the duties they have to do in order, when they're on that level, it keeps the other boys off, right? It's like it's a deterrent, and those deterrents are valuable. So, anyway, Hebrews 12:11.
Yep. Hebrews 12:11, for the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields a peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it.
Yep. That's a pretty popular verse in churches, right? It just kind of, says what it means. And then last, Proverbs 22:10.
And then drive out a scoffer, and strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease.
Now, that one's going to come in a little bit here, handy on the idea of when you're trying to decide what level of intervention you need, right? One of the things you have to remember is, what's his effect in the house? How's his behavior, changing the environment for other siblings, and even the welfare of your own marriage. Because like it says, drive out a scoffer and strife will go out. Quarreling and abuse will cease. One of the things I'll tell parents a lot of times when they'll bring their son to Future Men is, hey, I know it's a hard day, and I know that this feels like, at first, it definitely isn't, but it feels like giving up. It feels like I failed, I'm not doing my job. And obviously that's not true, but these are humans, right? And they make decisions. But I'll tell the parents, go rest for a while. Put your brain somewhere else. Get your marriage back where it needs to be in terms of just enjoy each other. Enjoy the fact that, your life the stress level has come down a few notches. Just get back to, quote, normal again. And then let's come back and let's start working on how do we restore our family. So in general, when and how do we get outside help? I wanted to make a comment about the first verse in Deuteronomy, which is so harsh. Things have changed in our nation since let's say the 1850s. A lot of the boys that come to Future Men, they would have just left home, right? They would have struck out on their own. They would have gone out west. They would have they worked on a fishing boat, or they would have done something other than stay in a home where they're being contentious. The parents would have said, hey, you're an able-bodied man, go make your way. Like, we have a student right now at Future Men. I won't say his name, I guess, because I don't know. That's his full name. Yeah. But he's 14. He just turned 15, I believe. And he is big. He's like, your height. He's a strong kid. He could easily be a man right now. He could work a job on a ship, or in a warehouse, or if he'd gone out west to be on a cattle drive or something, he would easily survive. He's not a child. And many boys that come here are that way. They're already men. They're just trapped by their age and their lack of responsibility, right? And maybe their lazy work ethic in somebody needs to take care of me. And reality is, nobody really does need to take care of you, except for the fact that we live in a different nation now where by law, parents can't just say, hey, you want to go out on your own, then go out on your own. We're legally responsible for these kids until they're 18. So, got to change tactics. right? You can't just let them go, even though they want to, and even though you at times that would definitely be like, it would seem like an easier option. Just we can't do it. So, in general, what are the principles of Matthew 18 for disciplinary steps? So, if you're not familiar with Matthew 18, it is the passage kind of going over church discipline. So, step one is go to the person, right, first on your own and try to reconcile your brother. So, with your children, this is what you do all the time. This is when you go in and you're just simply addressing the issue at hand, like sneaking out, or they're arguing with their sibling or doing something, and you just go and confront them. And there'd be other videos where we talk about different ways of confrontation and make sure discipleship's involved and all that. This is just the steps. So you go by yourself first, and then does it stop things? And then second, bring in someone with vested interest if that doesn't work. So whatever the behavior is that you're trying to stop, let's say it's oh, your daughter she's going to public school, let's say, or a homeschool co-op or something, and she's starting to like some boy, and you're a family that is thinking, okay, she's 14, we don't want her involved in a relationship at this point, but she's still maybe she has phone access, she's still texting him, or she's still arranging little meetings at church or whatever you're doing with this person, and you're like, we want this to stop, and she isn't listening. So enlist outside help. Bring in someone with vested interest, and you're gonna be using them in the next step of the confrontation, but also possibly discipleship with them, and possibly counseling. So,
Well, I think like that can be a difficult step
Yep.
for sure, because I think most families probably aren't that open about those types of problems that are
Right.
going on at that point usually.
Yep.
They're wanting to deal with it. It's embarrassing. They probably don't want other family members to know about it. They don't want their community members, work, those types of things. So yeah, what in your mind are those vested people?
That's the question. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
So going back to step one, right, where you confront them as a parent or as a family. So this would be you and mom, dad, mom, dad, whatever, have gone to this child on numerous occasions. You've already disciplined them, right? Maybe you grounded them, maybe you took away things from them, and they're just not stopping. So it's not like you went to them once and said, hey, I saw you sitting by this boy at homeschool co-op. We don't want this, break off this relationship. And the next week they're back sitting by him again, or passing secret notes or whatever. It's deeper than that. They're characterized by this is a ongoing, growing relationship or growing pattern or habit, right? It could be abusing their younger siblings, could be whatever it is. You've addressed it. Now you're saying, okay, they're not listening to us. Now we're bringing invested interest. That can be whoever you want it to be. We had a young man who recently enrolled at Future Men, and the dad was saying, how do I get him in the car to come here? Because he won't listen to us, right? He's that rebellious, he's that angry and mean. But the dad also told me, and this is super common for the kids that we get here, he's great with everybody else, right? His school teachers like him. His youth pastor thinks he's a great kid. Everybody wonders, why are you sending him to Future Men, or why are you doing such an extreme step when he's such a sweet kid or such a nice kid? And the reality is, yes, he is a nice kid, but he hasn't he's not putting himself under his parents' authority, right? He won't listen to him. So the vested interest is just somebody else who knows this kid well. It can be a grandparent, it can be an aunt or uncle, it can be a family friend that your son or daughter isn't going to just blow them off, right? Like in our family, like if we were having a situation with, let's say, Sawyer, it was something with a boy, and maybe we were like, hey, we don't really like this relationship. We're trying to talk into her, and she's just so enamored with, infatuation that she wouldn't want to listen.
Yeah.
Well, we would ask somebody like our friend, Craig Bowser, or maybe you, right? Or in our case, we could also ask like maybe an older sibling. She has good relationships with them. So it's someone that okay, they'll listen. They'll they're not going to flip out. They're not going to take this level of intervention. They might not listen in terms of they might not choose to obey, right? That's going to be step 3 if we have to go there. But they're going to at least sit in that meeting, hear everything that person has to say without the same responses they might give you. So what they might give you is they would just turn around and walk out. They slam the door and leave. Or sadly, they curse you out. They have no respect for your authority. They're done, right? So this person, there's some kind of a connection there that they're more embarrassed. They don't want to like act out or be crazy in front of, so they'll sit and listen to the whole conversation. And you and that person have already had like, a couple different times where you've gotten together and talked through, hey, here's what we're trying to prevent, or here's what we're trying to like, intervene on. This person's in full agreement with you. You've talked through like the tactics, the consequences you want to, incorporate in your family, what restoration and what repentance looks like. So this person knows all this ahead of time. So you're not, so the child isn't going to like be able to get them sort of like on their side. Like, well, that seems a little harsh. Do we really need to do that? Well, it's just, like young love, let it happen. This person's in agreement with you. And if you can't find somebody like that, that's a bummer. That'd be really tough. You had mentioned to me earlier today the possibility of the church.
The church, yeah.
So
I think the church is a huge resource and advocate for families that is overlooked so
Yep.
often. And part of it is like, I don't know, our individualist kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps mindset as Americans. Like, we don't need anyone else's help. We're going to figure this out. But I think that's especially anti-biblical in this
Oh yeah.
arena, because it's like, no, you're part of the function of the church is to serve one another, right? And this is a way that your church should want to serve you and should be equipped to serve you in. So I would say like that's a huge place that families should be looking first for help. Is like, go to your pastor, go to your deacon, go to your elders at church, and tell them, be honest, like, this is where we're at. We're not sure what to do. Um, not every church is that equipped to do that, and
Right.
maybe that tells you you're not in the right place or you need to look elsewhere. But I would start in at the church that you're involved with. It is always so much more. There's so much more hope and there's so much more support in the families that have those types of relationships
Yeah.
with their church. Like, we have a couple right now, and I've had many through the years where I actually have like the youth pastor that knew the kid back home at church calling me and asking for updates. They're connecting to the elders back at the church and reporting back and saying, hey, like, this son of our congregants is growing, and
Yep.
they care, they want to know. So I think sometimes families are just a little afraid to bring that into the light, or they're not really sure what help is available. But
Right.
I think you've got to have the courage to kind of take that step.
Yeah, and if you're not quite there yet, right, you should start now reaching out and finding out, okay, when I am there, who would it be? Right. Like at our church, you'd go to the pastor and, Jeff would like refer you to either one of the elders or some other, member of the church that he knows can relate well. Right. So you just want to start in your mind. If you're already foreseeing, hey, this is our kids listening to us less, this particular like influence in his life is getting worse. Start finding that person. Start finding someone. And when I say vested interest, that just means someone that kid knows has been involved in their life, going to continue to be involved in their life. And they're not just making some random, comment. So I would totally agree with you that it should be the church. For most people listening, it probably won't be the church because they kind of go on Sundays and then just sort of like, hey, not necessarily a checkbox, but they're for a lot of people, the church just isn't real big in their relationship circle. And that's too bad. But if your church is a part of you, then they would be perfect for this next step, right? For step 2. And you would also at that point, whether it's the church or whether it's your grandpa or whoever it is, you're also then setting up with your child, hey, we're also going to meet once a week or once every other week with this person again as a follow up, because that kid now knows, okay, it's not just mom and dad are involved. Other people are trying to help me. And that really does help, because even when a kid comes here, we get the good side of that kid. Even when they come in mad, we still get the good side compared to the parents, because the kids they're a little embarrassed. They're out of their comfort zone. So they're just a little more slow to like react. Not always, but generally, I'd say about 80% of the time, we get the good side for a while. And then we'll start seeing all the characteristics that the parents got, and that's okay. That's why they're here. So that's step 2, enlist outside help through the church or somebody else with vested interest. Step 3 is you got to send the child out of the home. And now we're going to talk about, okay, so what kind of behaviors are involved in those 3 steps, right? What kind of stuff would get my kid out of my home as compared to something you put up with, right? Something you just continue to just strive with and disciple and like continue to just work with your own child. So,
Which I think so many families are going to see that as a really harsh action.
Yep.
And reality is, we started with the Deuteronomy verse in chapter 21, where God's commanding the people on how to handle a rebellious child, and He says, "Stone them to death." And I think we're not promoting that, but
well, we might be. This is going to get a lot of clickbait on this episode.
Yeah, I know they're going to take it out of context. We're not promoting that
No, we're
at
not.
all. But the fact that God sees that as weighty of an issue,
Yep.
that He's going to say the judgment for this is being stoned to death. Like, there's only a few sins in the Bible where that's the consequence in the Old Testament.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's on that level. So,
yeah, so you
we have
have
forgotten
you
that.
have to take it seriously. They are going to have an impact, like Proverbs says, on the whole environment of your home. The other kids. I can't tell you how many moms I've talked to through the years of me doing this job that said they didn't realize how much stress, anxiety, tension
poison.
they were
Yep.
holding in because of this unhealthy child in their house that was causing so much chaos until they left. And then they
Yep.
were just like, they have other people telling them, you seem different, like you seem better.
Yep.
Like there's like this huge weight that comes off their shoulders. So it may feel unloving, but you have to remember, especially if you have other kids in the home, you're not just trying to love and protect that one kid. You have to be thinking about the family as a whole as
Yep.
well. And also, part of loving this kid may be allowing natural consequences to fall.
That's
In fact,
correct.
often I think like that natural consequences can be the best teacher to get to the heart of your child.
Well, you read a minute ago,
Yeah.
Hebrews 12.
Right.
Hebrews 12 talks about like no discipline seems joyful for the moment, right?
Yep.
And the end of that verse, or it might even be the next verse after that, it actually says if you're not being corrected, right, chastised by God, that you're not even a son. It says you're bastards and not even sons. And that's an old word that's like not used very much anymore. But that's, again, that's the harshness with which if you're not being disciplined, you should be afraid. Right. So yes, it can seem harsh. It'd be an interesting like debate to have like the king of gentle parenting in this room and talking about these verses in the scripture.
Who's the king?
I don't know. Somebody is. But it'd be like that's how crazy our society has gotten, where it's just like just affirm them, tell them how wonderful they are. Just they have low self-esteem or something else, which is causing them to be, this little tyrant in your home. And it's like, yeah, probably not. So when do you need the outside help? Number one, I put down early rumblings. Like these are the kind of behaviors that like are telling you, hey, something's up here. They don't finish conversations with you. They'll walk away like in the middle of a conversation. So you're sitting there describing to them what they need to do, and they just roll their eyes and like go back to their room or slam their door, right? Or just storm out of the house in a tirade. And it's like that's a bad sign. Right? There's a verse I think it's in Ezekiel, which talks about the ravens in the valley will pluck out that eye, from the kid that rolls the eye, it says. And it's like, again, scripture is pretty harsh on these types of behaviors because it knows, right? When the Holy Spirit inspired these writers, these authors, it's like, this is devastating to a family, right? This isn't what's going to keep a family together. You've got to act on it. So early rumblings, repeated offenses. So let's say it's something small. They're not helping out with chores. Their room's always a mess. It's the kind of thing you correct them and they go clean it up, but the next day it's the same way. Or 2 days later, same thing. Or they're just unrepentant. They're just like, Mom, I don't really care. Get off my back, right? That's the early rumblings of you're probably going to need at least take the next step of getting outside help, like from your church or from another person with vested interest. You don't need help. Now listen carefully to this. You've got kids like some of my own kids, like I would say like Hawken, Eli, some of the boys were a little rougher than others, right? Not to mention names.
Yeah.
We won't do that. Like, so yeah.
Makin and Milai.
Yeah, exactly. They required a lot of extra like attention. I mean, they did. It was a lot, but they always listened in the end. And it's like they were characterized by, okay, will you forgive me? I want to do right. But they may fail again, the next week or 2 weeks later, or even that same day. But it was like you saw the contrition. They were just struggling with self-control. They're kids, right? They're growing up. So if they're still listening to you and they're willing to do your consequences, that's the biggest, like, to me, that's the biggest telltale sign of, do I need outside help or not, is if they're willing to do your consequences. So if you're a family that spanks, right, and they'll go take their spanks, and they're not fighting you on this. They're like, you can discipline them however you're disciplining them. If you ground them and they actually go do what you ask them to do, or you give them work hours and they're out there, putting they got 18 work hours, let's say, for something they did to the family. Let's say they stole money off the washing machine in the laundry room, right? And they stole dad's $20 from his pants pocket or whatever. So you give them these work hours for it, and he's making restitution, and he's genuinely repentant. He's like, shouldn't have done that. You don't feel like it's like he just got caught, but he's actually like, he's trying, and he's still a little punk maybe, and he's still not perfect, but he's with you still. He's just hard. Some kids are harder than others, right? That's okay. If you've got him and he's listening, he's doing your consequences, he's still being discipled by you, he's praying with you, but you know that he's still just kind of a mess. Big deal. That's your job. He's just a tougher kid. Mm-hmm. Some kids genuinely are, on the outside surface, easier, but they might not be like, when they're 35, they were easier as a, 16-year-old or 14-year-old, but maybe later in life, they're just like, they're isolated. They're not having much effect on their society because they were just introverted. Whereas this crazy kid who was still listening to you, he might be a youth pastor now. He might be the guy that's like running a company. I mean, we had a student named Connor years ago at Future Men. And I remember walking into, he was in our mud room at that house, and he was banging his head against the wall, crying, just like he was so mad about a situation he had been in. And I walk in and I'm talking to him. And I said, Connor, do you realize that you're throwing like a little fit, like a 4-year-old? And he stopped and he looked at me and he started laughing. And he had never been like just called out for something like that bluntly. And I wasn't mad or anything. I said, you're like a little child. And he saw it for the first time. And it was so weird. It was like, he just turned, and his life wasn't perfect after that, but he's now like, I don't know, he's probably in his early 30s, married, got a couple kids. He's an amazing man. And it's like, he cares, right? But it's like, but he changed. And it took like the discipline for the moment it wasn't fun. It wasn't like pleasant, but he took it. And it's like, if they're taking it from you still, then don't enlist outside help, right? Just encourage him and just continue to disciple him. So what are some other things? So we got like, I put down, they're unrepentant. A second category would be, they don't protect their place in the family. They're not a healthy contributor. They won't do the chores you give them. They're not doing their homework. They don't necessarily come to the family table for dinner. I know it sounds crazy, but these are the kids that we get these calling cards all the time, right? So they're just not a healthy member of the family. You're basically treating your home like a hotel or like a restaurant, and it's like they want nothing to do with your family.
And they're sowing seeds of dissension, usually amongst the siblings, talking about mom or dad behind their back, or in the marriage. A lot of times there's like, they triangulate, and so there's one parent that they have a better relationship with, so they vent and air all their frustration about the other parent to that parent. Yep. And so that's very common. And then there's this tension that arises between the mom and dad at that point. And that's not protecting your place in the family. You're causing the family to come apart at the seams, basically.
So they're basically in it just for themselves. Mm-hmm. And if that kid can't see that, now I've said this a lot of times, that people, discipleship at church or at Future Men, right? Whatever. I've said that there's if you see your child willing to make a pragmatic move, he's like, hey, I want my place in the home. I want to be able to keep driving my car, have my cell phone, or my clothes, right? My life. I like my life the way it is. And his heart is far from you, but he's pragmatically obeying. You're still good. It's like, that's okay. That's not what you want. Obviously, we want their hearts, but we're not guaranteed their hearts. We're supposed to be faithful stewards and let God worry about the big picture, right? Mm-hmm. The long run, because that's his job. It's the Holy Spirit. But if this kid's, he's compliant. He's not being divisive with the other kids. He's not trying to undermine everything you do, right? But you just know his heart isn't there. Keep working with him. Keep discipling him. Keep praying for him. Don't abdicate your authority just because you're frustrated that he's not saying it the way you want to hear it exactly, or you just know he's on a different page. Yeah. We get that all the time, fishermen. And what's crazy is you'll see a boy who's like willing to obey, their heart sometimes comes afterwards, right? It may take 3 or 4 months, and then pretty soon, okay, they're letting their guard down a little bit. They're talking to you a little more. And then a lot of those boys, I hear back from them 6 months later, a year later, 3 years later. They'll write me a letter. They'll call me out of the blue and say, "Hey, Mr. Bowman, you were right. I really appreciate what happened there. Love to come back sometime and visit, or maybe give my testimony." It's like all that stuff is in them, right? So you keep putting it in there. You keep, doing your job as long as they're letting you, right? Pragmatic change better than nothing. When a kid really converts, right? He goes to like some youth rally or whatever, and just he gets convicted by the Holy Spirit. He's reading the scripture. He gives his life to Christ. Man, you'll see the behavior change. That's awesome. But sometimes you just got to be faithful on keeping that behavior in line and hoping that it's drawing their heart at the same time. You're just not guaranteed it's not always going to coincide. So.
Yeah. And it is going to feel like, as a parent, probably that you're giving up. I think that's probably a pretty common feeling, like, oh, I'm outsourcing my child to somebody else. And that can feel pretty demoralizing as a parent, I'm sure. And I know from other parents who've talked to me about this, but you have to realize, like, you're not giving up on them. You're having to make a hard decision as a parent out of love, believing that this is going to help, that this is going to help them turn a corner. And I think, I think about the story of the prodigal son a lot, at my job. And, there's a lot of debates on what exactly that parable is about. But I think one of the interesting things in that parable is when the son is being disobedient and wild and saying, like, I want my inheritance now, give it to me. The dad doesn't say, no, I'm not giving it to you. I'm gonna keep you in the home and let you keep, like, wrecking this place. He said, all right, if that's what you want, I'm going to give you, you're part of the inheritance now, and you can go and you can make your own way. And he lets, and as a wise man, I'm sure the father in the story knows, what's going to happen when he does that. That's why he's so excited when his son finally returns. He's woken up, he knows, and he's ready to be welcomed back into the family. And I think that's the hope for any family that's having to take this difficult road with their child. Is it's not hopefully forever. Hopefully their heart will come around. Hopefully they will see what you're trying to teach them, what you're trying to get them to see. And sometimes it just takes a hard lesson, and some perspective for their heart to change.
No, that's good. That's real good. And there's the reality of, right, you're not like, we don't know what's going to happen. So when you say, if their kid's 16, right, you can't say, here's your inheritance, go out. But you can, and we've had parents do this, right? If they're saying, I just got to get out of the house, I don't want to be here, you can give them that. Now, I grant it, programs cost money, outside counseling costs money, and you're going to have to really like figure out a way to do this. But if you can, right, and you got a place that completely agrees with your worldview, that's, pushing the same agenda you are, right? But now they're under somebody else's authority and they got what they wanted. You'll be surprised how that can wake them up and make them realize, my goodness, I was really taking a lot of things for granted at home. And there's regret, and they want to go home again. They see it now, but it took getting out of the house for a while to wake them up.
Yeah.
Next step. So we got like the idea of a boy. I put down boys because we deal mostly with boys, but this could be girls just as easily, who aren't willing to prepare for the future. So you got a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, and they're screen addicted. They're, always talking with their friends. They're doing things that are not leading them down the path of what's going to be a stable, like, next step as an adult, right? Not willing to get a job, not willing to do an apprenticeship. They're just screen addicted. It's like, that's going to require outside help. That's going to require you, if they're not willing to listen, taking that second step of somebody with vested interest coming in with you, or the third step, actually removing them from the home and getting them to wake up. Because the only alternative is we're just going to bide our time, right, until he's 18 and then just kick him out of the house. Well, we're going to put your suitcase on the porch when you turn 18. The kid's like, good, I can't wait, and it's this back and forth banter. And the reality is this kind of goes back to what, I think Silas was saying a couple of weeks ago on when you're at Disneyland or you're, You're somewhere, you're making these empty threats to your kid of, well, we're gonna go home, we're gonna turn around and leave, I'm not gonna let you go to this party. And reality is, we're all going as a family. The kids know empty threats. They know what that means now, right? So now he's 16, 17, and you're thinking, I can't wait till he turns 18. But reality is, you can wait because you don't want your kid to self-destruct. That's gonna be horrible for you too, and you know it. So it's like, well, will you really put his suitcases on the front porch? Some will, but they also know that he's going to be a crime waiting to happen, or he's going to go straight to those friends that are like horrible for him, and you know this. So it's like, if this is what he's doing, take these steps, right? Go to step 3 a little sooner than later. The boys will say things to me like, oh, like a real common thing is, well, they're lazy, let's say. They'll come in, well, I don't like to work. I want to do a desk job. I want to be like, a computer programmer, or I want to be, a video game designer or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I get that. So you're not wanting to prepare for blue collar work, but you're also not doing your school, right? So it's like people who are, let's say, more white collar oriented, they want a job that's like in an office or, on their computer or whatever. Great. You should be getting amazing grades. You should be like focusing all your attention on what it's going to take to get through that step of preparation, which is typically college, right? So when they look at you and say, I don't want to mow the yard, or I don't want to go get a job, or I'm going to do this, but everything else in their life is not pointing you that same direction, they're just lying, and you know it. They're just lazy in general. So you're gonna have to take a step. You have to, again, get outside intervention, enlist, maybe a program, but they can't. I tell kids here, you can't hate work and hate school. You can hate one. I get that. I mean, I understand that. I know that, I may not want to be a mechanic. You may not want to have greasy hands and work with your, out in a garage all day. But you better be doing your homework, because that's going to be your means of making a living. So they can't hate both. You can not like one. I get that. But then you got to really be focused on, so then what am I focusing on for my future? Because as a parent, it's our job to ensure they are prepared for that next step. Now, we can't all prepare them to be like a mechanic or a construction worker or even a computer programmer, right? I can't even, I have Ren show me all the time on my phone. I can't even how to get pictures up on the screensaver. It's like, I don't know how to do that. She'll come in and help me out, right? We're not all good at everything, but you got to be figuring out which direction is my kid leaning. Like when Hawken was about 14, it became pretty evident this kid hates school, but he's a good worker.
Yeah.
So we just pushed him towards the trades. And, he's married now, providing for his family, but we had to push him towards the trades. Other kids, it was like, oh, they really are academically oriented. Fantastic. Make sure their grades are where they need to be, right? Be pushing them, be like helping them get that next step in line. We often just assume, well, they'll do something with computers because they're always on their computer. Mm-hmm. But with AI and with the reality of most of the time they're looking at pornography or playing video games, they're not really actually learning anything. They're just fooling you.
Vegging out.
Yeah, kind of. And they're probably not even fooling you. A lot of times we just choose to turn a blind eye because we don't want to deal with it.
Or we think it's just normal. It's like what kids do these days. Yeah.
So we have just a couple more points here. I know we're about out of time. We'll kind of run through these maybe a little bit quicker.
Just real quick. I think part of maybe what gets parents and kids into these situations is just kind of this underlying assumption that our culture has that kids are supposed to have like this childhood and like teenage year where they don't have to work, they don't have to be motivated, they're going to figure all that out in the future. And I think that can actually really work against a child who's actually looking for direction. And that can become a motivation to them early on, like when they're 13, 14, 15. But if we're just saying, oh, nope, your only job is to go to school and then do this one chore in the house and that's it.
Or play sports or have your friends over.
And just have all this free time and fun time. It sounds nice. It sounds like you're being a good parent, but they're now entering into the early stages of adulthood where they should be figuring out what is their purpose in life. And if you as a parent aren't discipling them in that, they are going to be directionless and they are going to feel like they're going to develop as lazy, or they're going to, just not know where they're heading in life. So like, what's the point? I'm just going to play video games.
Yep.
So actually like discipling them, helping them figure out, what their passion is. Like I had this one dad, whenever his son was really young when he came to our program. And then when he went back home, he's like, I'm gonna help you like start a business. You're gonna do lawn care. Um, and at first he's like not wanting to do it because it's like, really hot, but his dad's like, nope, like I want you to do it. You're gonna service like all the neighborhood. And soon he found like a purpose in it. He realized, oh, I can save up money for do it like learning a trade, or I can save up money to buy my own car. And he was able to kind of just develop that business, and now he's like graduating. He has like a ton of money in his savings account, and he's really prepared for this next step of life. Not that he's going to do lawn care the rest of his life, but he learned how to run a business. He learned how to earn and provide for
Yep.
himself. And now he's going to graduate at 18, having experience that most people don't even have going into their late 20s,
Oh yeah. As an encouragement, we'll stop here. We'll do the heavier points, the more dangerous things that are telling you need outside help, right? We'll do that in the next session. So come back next week. But one last encouragement: when the boys come to Future Men, the very first thing they buy into, and I've said this before, it's not us, it's not necessarily relationships, it's the trades, it's the apprenticeships. It's so weird, but it totally changes their demeanor when they go to work and they come back home on Tuesdays and Thursdays after working for like 7 hours doing something they chose, right? They're in. Yeah. I think it's just because that's what we're supposed to do, especially as men, right? We're providing. We're like, it gives us purpose, it gives us meaning, and we feel like for that 8 hours or that 7 hours or whatever, no one's just sitting here around nagging me about getting out of bed or about getting off my computer or whatever it is that we're typically, not nagging, but it's what it feels like to them. It's those things they're gone. So the kids, they see the point, they see the purpose, and they're easier to get them to do it. So let that be an encouragement to you. If you're finding this idea of how do I enlist my kid in his own life, so to speak, we'll have an episode later on about apprenticeships and how do you find an apprenticeship and how do you know what your kid's going to be good at and how do you choose something like that. That'll be a future episode, so be looking for that. We'll come back next time and we'll wrap up the last part of this series on when do I need to enlist outside help and talk about the dangerous ones. So tune in.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next week. Bye. Oh yeah, also Silas isn't here. Make sure that you like and subscribe and share this video on YouTube and Spotify.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Any comments are helpful, so make them.